Hey, it's Dr. Evelyn here, and this video is about polyvagal theory and specifically how having a polyvagal informed chiropractor can help you with this aspect of your nervous system evolution. So, to start with, what is polyvagal theory? So, polyvagal theory was developed by a man named Stephen Borges, who is a PhD neuroscientist, and he had one major question. Why do people have these physiological and behavioral responses to stress? What causes them? Where do they come from? And is there any way that we can sort of control them? While he was kind of trying to answer this question, he was studying anatomy. And he became very curious in the vagus nerve because this nerve is gigantic and it is very special because it's one of our cranial nerves, which means it comes out directly from the skull and isn't really part of our spinal cord, and it doesn't travel the same path as most of our nerves do that innervate our body. It has its own sort of special pathway, direct connection to a lot of our organs. It is really extensive. It touches on a lot of our visceral organs, almost all of them, our heart, our lungs, our digestive system, even our reproductive system. And so he was thinking that this nerve was really the perfect candidate because all of those organs function very autonomically, which is the system that he was trying to understand. And so he began to study this nerve, and along with other markers of the autonomic nervous system, he was able to make the connection between the vagus nerve and these physiological and behavioral responses to stress. Now, there are three main elements to Stephen Borges's polyvagal theory. So I'm just going to walk you through each one briefly, and then we'll kind of share a little bit about why each is important and what it means for you. Now, I just want to preface this video by saying this course was 3 hours long. I have taken another 12-hour course on polyvagal theory, and I'm going to try to summarize this video in about 20 minutes. So bear with me. There's going to be things that I leave out, but I just want you to get the main kind of points of polyvagal, and just know that I know this stuff. So when I'm helping you and working with you from this approach, you know that that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so the first major element of his theory was this concept of nervous system hierarchy. And basically, Borges recognized that there's three sort of states in the autonomic nervous system response, and each state has some associated behaviors to it. So, what does that mean? So, you might have heard of kind of the two autonomic states, which are parasympathetic and sympathetic, or rest and digest versus fight or flight. So Borges recognized three. And again, he gathered all of this theory by looking at the anatomy of this actual vagus nerve. So he found that this vagus nerve actually has two main branches, a dorsal vagal and a ventral vagal branch. And then we also have our sympathetic kind of fight or flight system. So he was recognizing that not only do we have fight or flight as a response that we can have to stress, we also have freeze, which is when we shut down completely, sort of play dead. And we also have, okay, let me reach out and connect with another person. Let me turn on my higher executive functions and sort of figure this out. Let me, I want to be in community around other people. I want to come together. I want to have a social emotional connection. So these were three states, three options that we could have to any given situation. not just one, right? Not just when we think of stress, oh, fight or flight. And when we're not in stress, we're parasympathetic. No, in stress, we actually have three options. We can completely shut down, freeze, dissociate. We can mobilize, fight, run, act, whatever it may be. Or we can communicate with others. We can reach out. We can work together. We can find common ground, and we can use our ability as humans to connect to help us manage that stress and regulate. So this is huge because we as human beings are very evolved in this system. Now, the autonomic nervous system hierarchy, why it's called a hierarchy, is because as these systems evolved, they evolved in order. So our lizard brain, play dead, right? That's that dorsal vagal system. That is a very low hierarchical set of skills. Our sympathetic fight or flight is a little bit more evolved. And then our ventral vagal system is actually the most evolved. Only mammals even have this system, actually. So other vertebrates do not even have this system. It's a more higher evolved system. In reality, all of these different platforms are working simultaneously. And what we see as the behavior or physiological response that is exhibited is kind of the net outcome of all of the platforms. So if you just happen to be in a more sympathetic state, then you will kind of have that sympathetic behavior. But that doesn't mean the other two are not doing anything. They're all always on. They're all always working. But it's just what is kind of the net effect of that is what you will be presented with. But needless to say, when I'm looking at a given system, so if you come to me and I'm your chiropractor, I'm going to start seeing things and physiological responses, your heart rate variability, the way that you talk about your body and your experience, your affect, your personality, your mood, all of these things that can tell me sort of which platform you might tend to hang out in. And humans, we each all have a platform that tends to be sort of our dominant pattern platform. Now, this is not your fault. You didn't choose this, right? This is an autonomic nervous system response to stress. So this is how your body is dealing when it feels unsafe. And a lot of times this was conditioned from childhood. And you don't have a choice whether you're an anxious person or not, right? You don't have a choice if you tend to be depressed or shut down or whatever. You're not choosing that. It's not a personality trait, but it is affecting your behavior. So we'll start with that I will be able to kind of recognize what platform you are on and then help you move through the hierarchy as fast as possible. So you can always have all of these available, and they're actually really, there's benefits to each of these platforms. When you're not under threat, being in a dorsal vagal platform means that you are completely relaxed and immobilized and just blissed out and zen, right? But if you're under threat, it can mean that you go bradycardic and your heart rate becomes so low that you just shut down, or you can't get out of harm's way, or you faint and you hurt yourself, right? In a sympathetic response, if you're feeling safe, you are just being active and mobile. That's when you're exercising. That's when you're having sex. That's when you're, climbing up a mountain or feeling adrenaline. You're on a ride or something like that, right? And if you're feeling under threat or stress, then that's going to be that chronic like cortisol overload, like can't find your way, right? And then the ventral vagal under stress means that you might be kind of overanalyzing social emotional cues or unable to really, you really want to connect, you just can't like bear to be alone, you're feeling very isolated or very suspicious of different relationships. And when you're feeling safe, obviously that's how we connect and have great relationships with the world. So, so these three systems, none of which are bad, they're all always available to you, but you do have one that you kind of tend to hang out in, and you can't really get to the others without passing through in order, in hierarchy. And that is something that I can help you identify where you're at and also help you move through that system. When we have a very strong toned vagal system, that means that we're able to impact and move through the other systems and kind of put the brakes on the other systems a little bit more so that our net positive is more of that social emotional connection, more of using those higher order evolved functions. The second tenet of the polyvagal theory is called neuroception. So Borges, again, looking at the anatomy of the vagus nerve, saw that it was intertwined in all of our visceral organs. It has branches and it's up in everything, right? And he saw that there was a lot of afferent fibers that were coming from the body and back up to the brain. So the interesting thing is this vagus nerve is always, always, always scanning and collecting data about the safety of our body, the safety that we're in. So it doesn't really none of that data really sends up a red flag or causes us to be aware until there is something wrong, right? Until one of those red flags is raised, it is below the level of perception. So our vagus nerve is constantly sending fibers up to our brain about how the system is doing, how things are going. And it isn't until there's a lack of context in a situation that might send a red flag, or there's a lack of choice in a situation where we feel backed into a corner, that is also a red flag for our nervous system, or a perceived lack of connection is a third thing that's very triggering to our nervous system to start to wake up, right? The thing about our neuroceptive system is, though we're getting a lot of this data, we're not all perceiving that data the same way. So our brain sort of fills in the blanks a lot here. And this is where we can get a lot of influence from our, childhood, how we grew up, what our experiences start to inform this a lot. So if we've had, stressful or dangerous or unsafe experiences, you or I might think that, Disneyland is the happiest place on earth. Somebody else, had a traumatic experience in Disneyland. And so when they're at Disneyland, they're feeling super hypervigilant, right? So there is no right or wrong. It's every person's experiences start to inform how we perceive this data and when these data points start to feel like red flags to us. And so this is where we can get some of that disconnection coming into the system. And that sort of leads us to the third tenet of the polyvagal theory, which is co-regulation. So Borges was studying the anatomy of the polyvagal nerve. He realized that the ventral vagal system, that one that does all these social emotional connection stuff, doesn't actually develop until after we're born. And it isn't even fully developed until we're 25. So there's probably people watching this video that don't even have the full capacity to regulate their own nervous systems, right? And like anatomically, physically. So in these situations, it's really important that we have a co-regulator. And this is another human being that teaches us that we can look to and observe and see how they're responding to situations. Now, if you're like me and you're a parent of young kids, you might have heard of this co-regulation because it's used in this context a lot. When kids are having an inappropriate response, like they're having a tantrum or they're crying or they're scared, or they're just, they're having they're overreacting to a situation. As the parent, you're supposed to help them co-regulate. So that's by being calm, by breathing, by rephrasing something maybe in a very calm and direct way, by just being present with them and showing them how you're responding to the situation, and then letting their emotions pass. They physically do not have the ability to regulate or logically think, so you have to show them how the appropriate response is being done. And we don't lose the need to co regulate even after we've developed our own system. We actually gain a lot of safety by feeling connected to other people and by feeling like the group, if there's a group sense of safety, then we also can feel safe within a group. Again, these are some of the 3 quick and dirty main elements of the polyvagal theory. This vagal nerve is a physical thing that we can touch, we can tone, and we can impact. The greater that your vagus nerve tone is, the more quickly you will go from your autonomic, kind of conditioned, preferred platform of stress response into that social emotional connection, into that higher executive function, and into that cognitive cortical brain, so that you can actually find solutions to issues and also move past them and out of just that autonomic stress response cycle that you would otherwise be in. So being a polyvagal informed chiropractor means that I am aware and able to assess what state your system tends to be in more. And with awareness of this hierarchy, I can give you steps to help you start to gain access and tone that vagal system so that you aren't just stuck with the conditioning that you've been in, and that you can start to really, really make a quick jump from that initial feeling to that actually really well regulated state. And this saves you a lot of energy. This saves you a lot of excess, cortisol running around. This is easier on your body and overall better for your health. So that's the quick and dirty on polyvagal theory. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. Okay, this is Dr. Evelyn at Eudaimonia Chiropractic, and I hope this helped you. Take care.